Come and take a listen as I talk to my son on this episode of the podcast about his perspective around man, bear, and so many other things. Welcome to your emotional makeover. Things your mother never told you because no one ever told her. I'm your host, Dr. Amanda Hansen. This is where you reimagine womanhood. Let us begin. Before we get into the episode, I wanted to share with you that on November 2nd and 3rd, I will be hosting an event for 1,000 women in Phoenix, Arizona. Magnetic. Imagine a space where the biggest party meets the most transformative experience. This will be a one-of-a-kind, life-changing event that will divide your life into before and after. Connect with your magnetic energy. Discover your feminine essence. And learn practical tools for becoming the woman of your dreams. Claim your ticket at the lowest price possible right now. Spots are limited. I can't wait to meet you at Magnetic. I am so excited in today's episode to be joined by another one of my children. How lucky am I? My son, 23-year-old Hayden Hansen.
Hello, everyone. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me, Mom.
You're so welcome.
I'm excited to be a part of it.
So Hayden, much like Ava has shared, I'm sure, Hayden, you can share your own perspective, but we're going to have a conversation today about something. It's probably not going to be the last time that you come on, but we have a lot of really deep conversations. To the point where I don't even think we talk about things like maybe that a lot of people talk about.
No, I find myself getting bored often with regular conversations, I guess you could say, because they're not as deep as our family conversations and our conversations.
Yeah, I think we make this joke about like when somebody comes into a room and they just had to grab something really quickly, you better be prepared for it to be like probably a 45-minute or 1 hour stop because there's hardly any just passing through because somehow we have this knack for taking almost anything to a much deeper level.
Yes, we absolutely do. We do.
So this is kind of a trait of our family, if you will. And so to that end, we wanted to bring a conversation. As you heard in last week's episode, if you did hear it, I spoke with my daughter, Ava, about the man or bear situation that was, for lack of a better word, trending a couple of weeks ago on TikTok. And it was this idea where they were asking women of all ages, all backgrounds, all around the world, if you were to be alone, walking in the woods, alone, lost in the woods, would you rather encounter a random man that you didn't know or a bear? And so for context, I just want to set this up. Well, first I want to say I thought it would be really cool to bring him on and hear his perspective. He's only 2 years older than my daughter. And to be able to hear for our listeners, for all women of all ages, to be able to hear a man's perspective of that conversation. And then I'm going to ask him some questions for some suggestions he may have from a guy's perspective, how we can have hard conversations. Because you heard from Ava, her thoughts and feelings about that, and also her approach to hard conversations. So now we can hear from Hayden, and I don't know what he's going to say necessarily at all, but
nothing bad.
Well, okay, let's see. Let's just go organically with all of it.
Yeah.
So let me just set the stage. We were, I don't know, was that 3 weeks ago? Both Nanas and Papas were here.
About 2-3 weeks ago, 2.5, 3 weeks ago. Yeah.
We had all just sat down for dinner, and you were sitting across from your girlfriend, and Ava was here with her boyfriend, and it was me and Dad and both of your Nanas and both of your Papas.
Yes.
We're all sitting there. And I brought up the man-bear scenario.
Yes.
And we went around the table and pretty much asked every single person. And Ava and I were the only two at the table, and Dad, who already knew about this and had many discussions. So we kind of kept it open and neutral to see what everyone was going to respond.
It was very new to everyone else.
Yeah. So first, just share with me, what was your thought process even hearing about a woman in the woods with coming upon a random man or random bear? Were you like, this is the dumbest question ever?
I wouldn't say that I thought it was the dumbest question ever, just because of our family and you know, so I am more open and aware to these types of things. And yeah, I wouldn't say that I thought it was dumb at all, but I was kind of curious where it was going. I think I had somewhat of an idea. And I think that's probably, some people probably do think it's a dumb question, you know, because they don't think deeper into it. But once we got discussing it, I think it's a great question to ask, because it really shows the kind of issue that is, you know, going on within society, and also just a lot of men, you know.
Yes. So interesting that you just said, and with a lot of men, because I thought you were going to say for a lot of women. So I appreciate that you're almost even framing it, which I think says a lot about you. You already are framing it in regards to what you think the pulse is and the culture and the safety around men, maybe in the way that they show up, instead of being like, oh, just the way that women think about this. So let me ask you this first. I'm going to ask you a few questions, but what was your initial response? What would you prefer as a guy? What would you have preferred to have come upon?
For me, I would rather come across a man than a bear. But I kind of thought for a woman, you know, I kind of thought the same thing, but then I started to think about it more, and I realized, you know, there's a lot of, I guess, weird men out there. I guess I wouldn't say weird, because that's not the right word. They're just kind of lost and just like not, because I think everybody could be fixed, I guess, if you will. Hopefully, I would like to think that, like, think positive, like healed, you know, and taught the right way of things. And because I think it's a much deeper issue, you know, for most of the time. But yeah, I would rather be with a man. Obviously, a bear is very scary to me, but I think to a woman, the man is scarier, you know. So I think that I understand both sides of it. So for me, it was like, you know, it's offensive, because it's offensive in a way that I feel bad for the way that men are looked at. And, you know, but it's our fault, you know, and I'm like, oh, it's not my fault, because, you know, at first I was a little defensive, because I was like, that's something I would never do. If I was alone in the woods with a girl, I'm going to help her get out of the woods. You know, I'm going to fight off the bear if a bear comes. But I think a lot of men aren't that way. So it's unfortunate, you know, and that's why I was a little upset, because there is that persona that men are that way, and they're more, you know, aggressive than a bear. And it's unfortunate for guys, you know, that are not that way, because it's the stigma that everyone just is that way, you know, when I think there is people who aren't, or guys who aren't.
Absolutely. And I remember initially you were kind of shocked that when you heard your girlfriend and your sister and your mom all report that they would rather be in the woods with a bear than a random man. There was that moment where you were like, what?
Yeah.
Why? Why would you pick that?
Definitely that initial, I was very shocked.
Right.
And then I started to kind of think about it, you know, and hear from you guys. But yeah, I mean, I was definitely shocked a little bit, because a bear is very scary. You know, a bear will kill you if it's hungry or just playing around and curious. But I guess there's a lot of other things that could happen with a man just in the woods. So I got it understood more from where you guys were coming from.
Did it make you, maybe not then, and maybe not even consciously or on the surface, but if you sit with it long enough, does it conjure any feelings of almost sadness that this is the state of our society?
Yeah. So it really does. I think that's kind of where like the defensiveness came, because like I was just sad. And I think sometimes when people feel certain emotions, they don't know how to handle them. They get defensive. So maybe that's why I was getting defensive.
Okay. Can you say that again for all of our listeners? Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. Well, I just think when people don't know how to deal with their emotions, they get defensive, because they don't want to be wrong, or they don't know what to say. So the easiest thing to do is just kind of like shield up and defend yourself. I think that's kind of like just a natural instinct that's been like built within us. But it sometimes it takes time to be able to get in touch with the way you really feel and talk about it. And I think I just had to take that little second or two, or maybe minute, you know, and hear from you guys. And then I was able to not be defensive, and then talk about how it made me feel upset and sad, you know, that's the way that people look at men, especially being a man, you know.
So help me understand, walk me through, what is the process that's happening for you inside of your body that make you hear this news initially? You're like kind of taken aback by it. And there's that instinct, I could imagine on some level, maybe instinctually, like defense. And I'll come back to another question I want to ask in a moment, but there's that moment of like, and I heard you say, then I took like a minute or so and then was able to really open up and hear what everyone had to say. What is that internal process that takes you from initially wanting to be like almost in the defense of men or for men, or not me, I wouldn't.
Yeah.
What is that process that you go through that gets you from defense to, all right, now I'm ready to hear?
Yeah. Well, I think it's like, I don't know if it's so much of a process of just accepting it, but it's just like over time I've had to kind of develop that, because there's definitely been times where in different situations where I felt the same way and I just acted as just was defensive and didn't even get to the emotional part. But that doesn't get you anywhere, you know, it just makes everything worse.
Right.
So I started to realize that over time, and especially hearing things from you and just from experiences, you know, life experiences. And so I think just over time it's become, it's quicker, you know, that I'm able to get over the defensive part. So it's just thinking in your brain, you know, how is this going to help if all I do is kind of just put a shield up and don't listen to the other side, you know? So, or explain how I feel, you know, other than just, you're wrong, you know, that's not it. That's not how I am, how we are.
Oh my gosh, because that's a huge one that I hear. And it was happening with this, right? It was happening during the Me Too movement. It was happening during this man bear thing. And I'm sure it's happened a million times since as well. That statement, not all men. That is a really hard one for women when they're trying to communicate matters of the heart or a really true fear, or concern, or worry, or trauma they've experienced. And the person that they're trying to communicate it with comes right back with, well, not all men.
Yeah, but there's still men that are doing it. You know, there should be no men like that. But
oh my gosh, no men that should be doing that. I was going to ask you. In a perfect world, you know, yes. But, what is your response to that comment? Not all men.
Yeah.
Like, what would you say to people, to women listening who might have a partner who every time she tries to bring up these controversial, touchy subjects, however you want to describe them, and he goes right into, well, not all men.
Yeah. I would say if I was the girl, I'd say, well, do you really love me? I'd probably say that first. And then if he's going to say yes, at least I would hope so. And then I would say, well, if I was in the woods alone with a man, wouldn't you want to have the peace of mind that every man is a good man? You know, like, because not all of them, sure, not all of them, but there's still some. How are you going to guarantee that the man that she's with isn't one of those guys, you know? So until like we truly know that every man isn't that way, then there's always a need for the discussion, I think.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's so interesting. When I was having this discussion with Ava, we were talking about, I had said, well, if I, for some reason, found myself single, I would use this question. I would bring this scenario up as a litmus test.
It's a good one.
Because if I brought this up and I was, you know, having coffee with somebody I was newly meeting, and I brought this up and the guy was immediately defensive and did not show any signs of leaning in with curiosity, I would immediately know I have someone that I could never work with, because energetically I can't match to someone who's not willing to take a deep breath, lean in, including myself in other situations, right? And say, tell me more about that.
Yeah.
Help me understand like where you're coming from in that perspective.
Absolutely. I think it's because maybe initially like they're defensive a little bit, and you know, that still would be kind of something that's unpleasing. But if they're able to turn it around and say, well, tell me more about that, and then at the end of the conversation they're like, you know, I'm sorry about how I initially reacted, I totally understand where you're coming from. But I think that's a different scenario. But if it's just, you know, completely defensive, the shield's not coming down, then that's probably not someone you want to get into a relationship with.
Exactly.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that they're a lost cause, because like I don't like to think that about anybody, you know, unless you give them a ton of chances and then maybe you know, just let them figure it out on their own. But maybe that's not someone you start a relationship with, you know.
If one of the first signs or the earliest of conversations is defensiveness.
Yeah. And like not able to, because the initial defensiveness, like I had, you know, a little bit, not like to a crazy extent, I wouldn't say, but a little bit. I was just like, you know, that's like a bit to us.
I felt like you almost felt, I didn't even feel defensive-ness from you. I felt almost confusion or shock from you.
Yeah, that's a much better word for it. Because I think what I said, I was like, why? I was like, why would you? I was like, a bear will kill you. I was like, why would you
That's
not?
exactly what you said.
Like, you have a better fighting chance, even though maybe men are built a little bit stronger some ways. In most cases, not all the time, but just physically, I think it's probably the wrong thing to say, but in just some cases, I think a woman would have a better fighting chance against a man than a bear. But I was thinking about it in the wrong way, just because I don't even think that way since I'm a man, So it's like, because, earlier, I think during that conversation, you asked me, how could you, or what's a situation that you would say is similar? And
for a guy,
for a guy,
what are you most afraid of? What would be the scariest thing for you? For a woman, it would be alone in the woods with a random man. What would be the inverse of that for you?
Yeah, probably. I mean, being with a bear would be really scary for me, or like being with a man, it's nothing's gonna happen. Me and him will probably figure out how to get out of the woods together. Or if I don't like him, I would just walk away. So it's that situation. I mean, maybe walking through a city alone at night, very late at night, down through an alley, something like that. Maybe I feel something similar, but that's just more of, having someone rob you, or just kind of something that everyone fears. So I don't think there's some exact situation
that wouldn't necessarily be perpetrated on you because they wanted to violate you because of your sex.
No, more of like, maybe they're really hungry. They need some food. So they're going to ask me to give my wallet up or something.
Yes.
And in most of those cases, you probably walk away unharmed. You just give away what you have. Maybe you get a punch, or I don't know, whatever it's going to be, but it's not a violation of your being.
Yes. Yes, I think that is probably one of the biggest things. And I was reading so many women's response saying that violation of her humanity and her body by another human would feel worse than a bear who lives there, whose territory she was in, being attacked or mauled by an animal who that was the instinct to do that thing, protect itself, especially if there was like a baby cub nearby or something. Yeah. And so, it was really even sad for me. And I remember having a conversation with somebody who said to me, she kept hearing from people, but typically a guy's there to protect you, and we would want to protect you. And it got into this conversation about men protecting women just in general in the world. And she said something so profound that really kind of took me aback. She said, wouldn't it be beautiful if the goal of this world was that men no longer needed to protect women because there was nothing to protect them from?
Yeah, no, that would be great. And honestly, like, I don't even know if it's a protection thing as much of a controlling thing, because I think like you just see things right now with abortion laws and just things like that. Like if men were really there to protect women, how's that protecting them? It's like
oh my gosh, can we say that again? That's like a mic drop moment. Hayden.
Well, it's just deciding what a woman can and can't do with their bodies is not protecting them in any way. It's controlling them, if anything. Protecting them would be allowing them to get an abortion after they've had an unwanted pregnancy, or something. So I think if a man is to say that, it's just, that's not the reality of the world. I mean, maybe if there's a war going on, like, we're going to fight for the woman and the children, but that's not the case right now. I mean, there's a lot of issues going on in the world. I'm not trying to downplay or anything, but I don't think, that's the case necessarily, and if the woman was alone in the woods, she could probably make it out alone. We're just as equally intelligent. So and to be honest with you, if the man was there, maybe he'll take on the bear, but if the bear wants both of you, he's going to get both of you. So, I don't think that is a good argument really, for a man to say.
Right.
Right. Because that's an issue what I said, but then I thought about it more and it makes sense, It does.
So this is a really hard question, and I don't expect that there's a 3-step solution, but just philosophically, if you're to think about it, if you did have some kind of a magic wand or superpower to end all of it, what do you think is at the heart and soul of so much violence from men towards women and so much violation and harm? What do you think lives at the root of that? And then the second question would be, if you had that magic wand or that superpower to just change something, what would you go in there and say, this is at the core what needs to be changed?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things, right? Probably, but I think a big one is probably like misunderstanding. It's just a big misunderstanding. Guys not really opening up and listening to where women are coming from and whatnot. But I think the problem goes even deeper than that, because I guess that's kind of the problem because of the problem,
So really, when we think about what is at the root of the violence against women, I understand there's like misunderstandings and
Yeah,
conversations,
because I think
misunderstanding of experiences.
the misunderstanding comes after the violent, so it's like, what is the deeper thing? It's a really hard one, but I think there's deeper issues in all the men that feel this way, that maybe they had some type of rejection, or they were not raised the right way, both of these things, by a woman, and that's why they have this hate for a woman. Because I personally have never felt any sort of aggression or hate towards a woman. I've only ever wanted to, take care of you and take care of Ava, the woman in my family. And then, everyone outside of that, I've always just, kind of watched out for them, whether they were my friend or not. Just made sure they're okay at a party. I mean, there's been stories in college where I've dealt with things, confronted things. I saw guys doing things at a party, taking advantage. And so I tried to watch out for that. But I think it's just because of the way that I've been treated by women. I've never been treated a negative way by you or by Ava. So I have nothing but respect for you guys and women. So I think that maybe it's something like that. Their mom did something to them, or maybe they were rejected by a girl, or they've been rejected by multiple girls, and that's what it is. But I mean, there's just, and it could be totally other things that, wasn't even involved with a woman. They just feel like they need some power. They need some authority. I don't know. I wish I knew the exact reason why. I think there's probably a bunch of different reasons why.
I think you're right. Yeah. I think it's not just one.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's so many different things that can lead to it. And I would definitely imagine that there are incredible, amazing mothers who raised their sons, took great care of them, loved them, and was available to them, and their sons still turn and commit acts of violence against women. Coming from maybe
there's also people like freaking there's people out there that are like Andrew Tate, just these other people out there that are just giving the complete wrong idea of what or how women should be treated. Most of the guys my age, just most of the people that they look up to, it's just I'm just dumbfounded at how somebody can think that that's a way to get a girl.
I really want to have this conversation, but I want to push pause for 1 second and come back to this, because you just opened up like a really hot topic. But I'm curious about if you could come in with like a resolve for all of the violence that happens towards women from men at the hands of men. What would you do? What would you do to create that? Just tomorrow morning we wake up and that ends. A woman is never attacked or brutalized again by a man.
Yeah, I mean, I would probably say the easiest thing to do would be, if it happens, like some very, very, I mean, I wouldn't say like there's a death, maybe not a death penalty, depending on what you do, but something very, very serious happens to you, whether it's going to jail for a while. I think that it's all just, I mean, you see nowadays, there's all these allegations, all these things happen, and they're just kind of wiped off, and maybe someone pays something and that's it, I mean, so I think the punishment should be much greater for your actions, because then people aren't going to do it again. But that's one thing to make it stop from happening. But obviously the best way to do it would be make it just so people don't want to do it. The guys aren't doing it. They don't want to do it anymore because they understand, they feel for the woman, so it's not just, oh, I'm not going to do it because I'll get in trouble. It's like, I'm not going to do it because it's not the right thing. Or and so I think it's a lot of confusion. Like some people just may not know how to talk to the opposite sex or whatever it is. So, I think so maybe it's a lot of insecurity too, because people are afraid to be wrong, or they think that this is the way to do things because they've heard it from other people. But I think just like staying true to how you feel. And I'm getting a little off topic here, but I think those are some of the ways. Maybe I don't know. It's hard to say because I don't think many other people are trying to figure this type of stuff out. So it's such a new thing, really. I think a lot of people don't even think it's an issue. They're just like,
it's so normalized.
Yeah, and they're like, if anything, it's gotten better. Like, but it might have got better for a little bit, but if anything, it's going back in the wrong direction. So
right.
Yeah.
So in regards to this name that like pains me to say his name.
Yeah, I almost didn't even say it. But
this guy who is like leading this movement of this is the true masculinity and this is the true way to be. I mean, I don't know because I don't listen to him. I've only had like, you know, things that I've heard him say before from other people sharing it with me. What is your philosophy about all of that?
I mean, I think he's an idiot personally, but I despise him. Honestly,
it feels dangerous to me. It feels like it's perpetuating.
Well, you like
exactly
you can tell like he's just such an insecure guy who's never actually known how to have a conversation with a girl or a woman. You know, I mean, it's very obvious, and all the people that are following him are just these insecure boys who don't know what to do, or they think that just because this guy has a nice car and a nice watch, he's got it all. You know, and who even knows if the watches are real? I mean, you know, you never know. So it's like, I personally, I saw it a few times, saw him talking a few times because it was out there. Nothing now, he's kind of gone, but I can't believe that people really think that, you know, what he's saying is like the way to do things and the way to talk to a girl or a woman. But I mean, it goes to show like all these girls that he's with or all these women he's been with aren't really there for him. You know, they're there for maybe what he has or for just the image. Nobody's there because they love him. You know, he doesn't actually know how to find that. So it's,
or give that.
Yeah. So I think it's a very lost, insecure thing. And I think the people that are following him are very lost and insecure. And that's okay to be lost and insecure. I've been lost and insecure. I feel lost all the time, you know?
Yes.
Where it doesn't mean you go
and hurt somebody else.
Like,
demean someone else or objectify somebody else.
Yeah. So there's so many other people to go out there and listen to, but the best thing to always do is just like listen to yourself, really. And if you feel lost and you're like, even what I'm thinking is wrong, then maybe like find someone who's speaking differently about things, you know?
Right.
There's a ton of people out there who have great philosophy and, you know, they have the right idea of the world. So I would say never listen to him. And, you know, obviously no one on here is going to be, but yeah.
So I want to go back to something you just said. I think it was so powerful. You said, you think that a lot of these people who talk about women like this or objectify women or use women or glorify this idea of, you know, treating women however they want, you have this sense that often those people are quite lost and confused and it's kind of like they're just not on a path that speaks to like equal humanity. So, and then you said, I'm often lost and confused. So you're often lost and confused. How do you move through feeling lost and confused and not taking it out on other people or dominating other people or hurting others?
Yeah, I think just the best thing to say really is, because I'm sure there's times in the past where like I have taken it out on one of my guy friends, you know, because I was just annoyed. But all that does is just deepen it's like digging the hole even deeper. You know, it's not fixing anything or addressing anything. It's just like, instead of saying how you feel or talking to somebody about how you're lost or you're confused, you're just being angry towards them or getting mad at them because it's easier. It is easier to do that, but it's not fixing anything, you know? So I think what I've started to realize is like, even my guy friends in college, you know, I lived in a house with 7 other guys. And, you know, there was times where I knew like some of them were feeling that way or I was feeling that way. And I would just say it, you know, I would just say, let's just talk about it, you know, because that's just, and then it just opens up this whole thing where that's just how it is. Like, that's the new way that it is. And it's not like, you know, just
we're just going to push it under the rug or like
it doesn't fix anything, you know? So I think that's the biggest thing, like just being in touch with the way you really feel and accepting it, because everyone's feeling it, you know, like nobody's perfect. The people that are acting like they don't feel it are probably dealing with a lot, you know? So
yes. Yeah. Oh my gosh, Hayden, you have to come back on. I thought of like 7 other conversations that we can have from this one.
Yeah.
I'm going to take some
it's definitely
notes
stemming
after.
into a lot of things.
Yeah. Cause I'm really curious to have a conversation with you about your perspectives on patriarchy. Because Ava and I talk a lot about how, and I talk a lot about this with my clients and in my work, that the structure of patriarchy hurts everybody. It hurts men, it hurts women, it hurts us in different ways. It hurts the relationship. So you'll have to come back, and I want to hear from you, your thoughts about the pressure that patriarchy and that structure puts on men. Yeah. Because I think that's really important.
It's a big thing for sure. Yeah. It's a whole conversation.
So you'll come back and we'll do that one?
Yes, I will.
All right. Thank you so much for being here, Hayden, and having this conversation and being so open and willing, because he really had no idea what I was going to even ask him. I told him the topic, but he had no idea before we sat down.
No. I was just told a few minutes ago before my shower, actually. So I had no time to think about it. Just this is really, I mean, a lot of people don't believe it, but this is how we talk. I mean, we were talking like this before the podcast. So it's great. So thank you for having me.
You're so welcome. I just made me think of something. I remember when, the kids were very little, and I'm not saying this is right or wrong. This is just my way. I never, ever spoke baby talk to them. It wasn't something I did. I didn't use like a baby voice. I didn't talk baby talk to them. I got down on their level when they were little or tiny, or I'd sit, on my knees, or I'd sit on the floor so they could see me eye to eye. And I would just talk to them in the few words that they could understand. And it doesn't mean I was a perfect mom. I've made lots of mistakes. There are times I've yelled. There are times I did all kinds, sent them to their room or whatever, took away privileges. But I always spoke to them and had conversations. Like, we have been in the art of conversating since they were 18 months old, 2 years old, 4 years old. We've always spoke about, well, how do you feel? And okay, you just explain to mommy, how does it feel inside your body right now? I can help you. Right. And helping you always identify what it was you felt. And I think that's why all of you are so readily and easily available to just go into the hard and big and deep and sometimes really uncomfortable conversations so easily all the time.
Yeah, exactly. And I think like that goes back to me, because you were asking, how are you able to, what's the thought process in your head to, get the defense thing to go away and talk to your emotions. But I think that's a lot of what it is, just being in touch. And it's just something you build, because it's not something you can just do overnight. I mean, you could, but for anyone out there who's like raising younger kids, it's never too late, but never. Like what you were saying is just so important, instead of just saying, oh, you're in trouble because you did this, and leaving it at that. It's like, you did this, why did you do that? And like, how are we going to fix it next time? How are you not going to do that again? Because there's always a reason you do something. It's like, it's not just, oh, I failed that test because there's always something. It's always a deeper thing, and you just got to get in touch with it and talk about it. And I've always said and felt like whenever there's a weight on my chest about something, like, because I'm not talking about it, after we talk about it, or whether it's with you or whoever it is, you feel so much relief, and then you're able to really be in touch with everything, and then the truth comes out and the good comes out,
Yes.
So, I think that's always been something you've done, and it's helped a lot. Yeah.
Oh, I love
definitely
this so
helped
much.
a lot.
All right, we're going to be back with so many more conversations.
We could go forever.
Yeah, we really could. You'll probably grow a beard.
I didn't even know we'd spend 30 minutes. I thought it was like 10.
I know, right? Yeah. Ava we get onto these episodes, and Ava's always like, Mom, I have to go to this thing. I have this thing, only 30 minutes today. And we look up and we're like, oh, 45. Whoops. Thank you so much for listening. I'm sure that Hayden will come back, grace us with his presence, and so many more beautiful conversations. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I would love to hear your feedback. Message me on Instagram or write a review. And of course, if you know a woman who could benefit from this episode, please share it with her, because it can heal her life. And that's what sisters do. Love always, Dr. Amanda.